Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk some Blue Jays baseball with you for the next half hour or so. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live Thursdays at 6 p.m., and you can find us on Jays from the Couch's YouTube channel, Facebook, or Twitter pages. And if you are following along with the live show, and you think of a question or comment, please do send it all in. I love the fan interaction. I think it makes the show that much better. And if you aren't catching the live show, but you still want to check us out, no problem. When you're ready for us, we're ready for you. You can catch the archived version on any of those aforementioned medium, so Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And if you like the content here at Sunny Side of the Dome, there's lots more where that came from. There's Jays from the Couch's main podcast, which is Mondays at 6 p.m. That's hosted by Shaun Doyle, founder, senior editor, and he's always got lots of interesting stuff for you to check out. And that is also available in addition to streaming Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can download that and listen to it as a radio podcast. So any quality podcast carrier will have Jays from the Couch. And the other YouTube show that you should definitely check out is the Untitled Circle. That's Tuesdays at 6 p.m., hosted by my colleague Steve Feck, who's got lots of knowledge and lots of very interesting insights and ways of looking at things, and he's very funny, entertaining. So give that a listen if you haven't been doing so. Untitled Circle, that's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. And good evening, Blue Jays fans. Happy Thursday evening. Are you as excited as I am? I bet a lot of you are. It is opening day. It was MLB's opening day today. Some games are already in progress. One of them is in the books, the Brewers versus the Cubs. And our Toronto Blue Jays play tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Right here in Toronto at the Rogers Centre. I'll be there. I can't wait. Maybe some of you guys will too. Maybe we can say hi in person if any of you are going to be at the game tomorrow. But yeah, we've all been looking forward to this after last season, after missing the playoffs by one game, and then the off season that felt 10 times as long because of the lockout. And now baseball's back, and we're about to have regular season baseball, and life is good, and let's sit back and see what our guys can do. So leading off today, some transactions, some rather interesting transactions in the last week or so. So a lot of people, myself included, actually thought that the Blue Jays would add Greg Bird to the 40-man roster and that he would be joining the Major League club, at least to start off the season. He hit quite well in spring training. This is someone with Major League experience. In 2015, he was actually very good for the Yankees, missed all of 2016, and then played in all or parts of a few more years. Unfortunately, didn't do as well. And in fact, his performance kept declining, but injuries were a part of that. So anyway, it came as a bit of a surprise to a number of people when the Blue Jays released Bird. What happened, as is the case with many people who are veterans who sign with some experience, is there's a clause in their contracts that says that if they aren't added to the 40-man roster by a certain date, that they have the right to opt out and seek opportunities with other teams. So that's what happened. He wanted to go. So Greg Bird, all the best. He's actually back with the Yankees organization and in their minor leagues system. So kind of interesting there. He didn't want to stick around with the Blue Jays as part of their minor league system, but he's okay to be with the Yankees as part of theirs. Anyway, I don't know. Only he knows what's going on and what his reasons are. So instead of Greg Bird, the Blue Jays actually made another addition to the roster, and that is they've added, and pardon me if I butcher this pronunciation, Gosuke Kato. So he's been in camp with the Jays. He is 27 years old. He has yet to play in Major League Baseball, but he's played in the minors forever for 8 seasons. He started when he was 18 years old, and he's just never made it to Major League Baseball. But he had a good spring training. He's a left-handed hitter, and maybe the Blue Jays, in addition to what they saw from him, they like his versatility, I'm thinking, because he can play first base, second base, third base, right field, left field. So basically anywhere other than center field, shortstop, catcher. So it's interesting for him in that when he suits up and takes the field for the Blue Jays in a regular season game, it will be his major league debut at age 27. So official welcome to the Blue Jays. Great for him for pursuing what he wanted and not giving up. And yeah, I hope he does well. Another roster move that I was a little bit taken aback by. So the Blue Jays and the Chicago White Sox traded catchers. So they've sent Rhys Mcguire to the White Sox in exchange for Zach Collins. So they're both kind of backup catcher types. I mean, they didn't just trade away Danny Jensen or anybody like that. Essentially, they're both left-handed hitters. They're both somewhat similar in that neither are particularly good hitters in the major leagues. So Collins has a 77 career OPS plus. Similar to Mcguire's. Mcguire's is 81, so neither are terribly good as a hitter in Major League Baseball. Two big differences between them. One, Rhys Mcguire has very good defensive numbers. Zach Collins, unfortunately, his defensive numbers are they're pretty ugly, if I'm being honest. And so I looked at this trade on the face of it, and I thought, what the heck are they doing? One thing that Zach Collins has that Rhys Mcguire doesn't is he has an option year yet left, excuse me. So the Blue Jays can send Collins to AAA. He doesn't have to pass through waivers. Whereas with Rhys Mcguire, he would have to pass through waivers. So if the Blue Jays thought that they would lose Mcguire for nothing if they tried to DFA him as they did a year ago, I guess they thought having Collins, at least his depth, he has major league experience. So we'll see how that goes. He actually made the opening day roster, and yeah, it will be interesting. So yes, a couple of IL stints to start off the year. Unfortunately, neither Ryan Borucki or Nate Pearson will be making the trip north with the club, at least not right now. They're both on the injured list. Borucki, he has a hamstring issue. He was pitching a few days ago, and I guess the trainers noticed it and they had to take him out. So all the best to him. Poor Ryan Borucki. I mean, he has so much talent, as we saw in 2018. He just can't seem to stay healthy and put it together enough to have sustained success. Say that 5 times fast. Anyway, yes, so all the best to him. Get well as soon as you can. And Nate Pearson, he's out with mono. So they don't know how long he's going to be out. It could be an extended absence. And I mean, again, the same as Borucki. Here's this young man, Pearson, who, I mean, he was the Jays' #1 prospect at one point. He's got all the raw talent in the world, but he can't seem to stay healthy long enough to put it all together and have success. So really hoping that this changes. And Nate, as a Blue Jay fan and more as a human, get well soon. Hope you'll be all right, and hope you can come back and help the Blue Jays sometime. We don't know when, just whenever he's healthy enough. Anyway, so for the heart of tonight's order, here we are a day away from opening day, and the expectations about our Blue Jays are very high. I don't think they've ever been higher going into a season. A lot of people have got them picked definitely to go to the playoffs, probably to win the division. A lot of people think they're going to the World Series. Some people have got them picked to win. A lot of people have them losing to the LA Dodgers, but we'll see. That's a ways off. One step at a time, they've got to get there first. I want to take a look at the team and put together what I think are my expectations for this coming season, at least, excuse me, during the regular season. And on that note, excuse me, just a moment. All right, so while I know that there are projections out there, there's Zips and there's Steamer, and there's probably a dozen other ones that I haven't really heard of. I look at these projections every now and then, and honestly, to me, they seem a little bit out in left field. Like, I don't know whether they're being conservative on purpose so that they don't overestimate someone's success. I don't know. That's how it seems to me sometimes. So I'm going to look at it in this way. So first off, what are my expectations regarding the Blue Jays? Well, I went on record a while ago and said 101 wins, which would be a franchise record. Currently, their record is 99 wins in one season. Now, I said 101. I'm actually going to work with 100 here today. It's a nice, round, easy number to get to. So how did the Blue Jays get to 100 wins? So I'm going to look at Fangraphs wins above replacement, otherwise known as FWAR. And again, I'm learning lots about the analytics. A lot of you watching probably know this stuff inside out and backwards, or maybe a few of you don't. But anyway, so the way it works is a team that has nothing but replacement level players is expected to be roughly 47.6 WAR for the entire team. So how do we get from that to 100 wins? Well, we have to, amongst the team, we have to come up with 52.4 wins above replacements. For me, I am looking at, for the most part, I'm looking at what these players have done last year. Now, there's a few cases where I'm going to depart from that a little bit. And when I do, I'm going to explain why I do. But for the most part, to me, I'm looking at the recent past performance to give me an indication of what I think they're going to do in 2022. And I don't, there are some cases where I look at these numbers and I think to myself, you know what? I think this could be higher. In one or two cases, I think it could be significantly higher. But again, in order to avoid the appearance of being unrealistically optimistic, in most cases, I'm probably going to stick with what last year's numbers said. So off the top, of course, where else are we going to start with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the runner-up for league MVP, and pretty much in almost any other season, he would have been league MVP if Shohei Ohtani hadn't done what Shohei Ohtani did. So Vlad Guerrero Jr. was good for 6.7 FWAR last year. Am I concerned that he's going to regress? No, I'm really not. We were told long before this man made his MLB debut that he was a generational talent, that so many people watched him and watched his hitting and said that he had few peers. And I believed it then, and I believe it now, and he's going to be something special for years to come. So 6.7, I'm writing him down for that, so to speak. Bo Bichette, last year 4.9. I'm gonna go with that. Again, in my heart, I'm thinking that might be a little bit low. If anything, I see him taking a good step forward in 2022. Not that he wasn't good in 2021, he certainly was. He was an all-star. But more than anything, I see him having a better overall defensive season than he did in 2021. So while I'm officially going with 4.9, in here I'm thinking that he could end up being like even a 5.9 or who knows what. But that's where I've got him. George Springer, 2.4 FWAR, but only in 78 games. As we know, he was injured for quite a bit of last season, unfortunately, so we didn't see a full season of George Springer. So fingers crossed, knock on wood, and it seems like he's been healthy this spring, so let's hope that he plays in twice as many games, and we can double that F4. So I'm going to put him down for 4.8. Myself, honestly, and again, this is my viewpoints. We don't have this proven yet or anything, but looking back on the season that George Springer had in 2021, when he wasn't injured, there were times when they had activated him and he was going out there doing his darndest, but he really wasn't doing all that well. In fact, I remember I was on Twitter and I made a comment worded as politely as I thought I could, saying basically, George Springer, I know you're trying to help the team, but the way you're swinging the bat right now really isn't cutting it. Maybe it's time to grab a seat on the bench. And then he hit a home run that later that game that helped the Blue Jays win, and a whole bunch of people let me have it, and that's fine. I could have deleted the tweet, but I didn't. I said what I said. I take the consequences of it. So that being said, if he stays healthy all year, he might be able to avoid those longer stretches where he really doesn't look all that great. So 4.8 could even be an underestimate, but that's what I'm going to put him down for. Teoscar Hernandez, 3.9. I'll give him that. Again, I kind of feel like he could be a tiny bit better than that, but to not overestimate and overhype my team, I'm going to stick with 3.9. The biggest jump that I see is for Kevin Biggio. Kevin Biggio last year, as we all know, he really had a down season, and he was only good, if you can call it that, for minus 0.1. Well, as far as I know, Kevin Biggio, when he played last year, a lot of the time he was playing hurt. He was also way out of position. I'm sorry. He did not look good as a third baseman, making those throws that he couldn't make. Instead, I think the real Kevin Biggio is the Biggio that we saw in 159 games between 2019 and 2020. In those 2 seasons total, he was good for 3.7 F4. So that's what I've got him down for. I think that's the real Kevin Biggio, and we're going to see. Matt Chapman, last year, he was good for 3.4 F4 in a season where his hitting overall, he had some peaks and valleys. The overall numbers were about league average. And in his career, Matt Chapman has done a lot better than league average in previous seasons. So that 3.4, well, we know where it came from. That came from his elite defense. I've got him down for a full game better than that. I've got him down at 4.4, and my reasons are that, excuse me, sorry about my voice. So yes, my reasons for that are that Matt Chapman, back in 2000, he had major surgery on his hip. And realistically, it takes time for the body to completely heal from that. Chapman himself, in spring training, after having been traded to the Blue Jays, commented that he now feels as healthy as he had in years. So I could see between hitting in a hitter-friendly ballpark for his home games in the Rogers Center, in the middle of this absolutely stacked offensive lineup, I could definitely see his offensive numbers looking a lot more like they did before 2021. So that's where I say 4.4 is not unreasonable. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., last year, 1.5 F4. In my heart, I see him as a much, much better player than that. And I still say, as I've said before, that I think 2022 is going to be a breakout season for him. But erring on the side of caution and not wanting to go too crazy, I'm going to leave that at 1.5 just for now. Jose Barrios last year, 4.1. Now, most of that was with the Minnesota Twins because Jays only had him for 2 months. But I'm going to leave that at 4.1. Kevin Gausman, 4.8. This is the one place I don't think Kevin Gosman is going to be terrible by any means, and I hope that he's a pleasant surprise. This is the one number that I look at, and I feel like there could be a little bit of regression to the mean there. If anything, I could see Jose Barrios being better and Kevin Gosman a little bit worse. But again, let's leave those numbers where they are and move forward with them and hope that only surprises are pleasant ones. Let's hope. Alec Manoah last year, and even two, but that was in 20 games. He wasn't called up, if you remember, until late May. And then he did miss some time during the season there were a few different reasons. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say that instead of 20 games, that he starts 30 games in 2022, so that 2 WAR performing at the same level becomes a 3 WAR. Again, in my head, I look at Alec Manoah and I think he's a very special young talent. I think that it's very possible that he could take a big step forward in 2022 and become even a much better pitcher than that. So 3 could be a big underestimate, but I don't want to get way ahead of myself and predict 130 wins or anything because that's just silly. So I'm going to leave that at 3.0. Hyunjin Ryu, 2.5. Let's hope that it's no worse than that. I mean, we know that he really fell off in the last 2 months of last season. He was good early on. He's in really good shape now, so hopefully they can find ways to keep him fresh and not overtired. Yusei Kikuchi rounding out that rotation. Interesting season. He was good for 1.1 FWAR, in spite of being so dominant early on that he was an all-star. But his second half really wasn't good. So again, just like Ryu and maybe that much more so, hopefully they can find a way to help these men be consistent all season, rest when they need to rest, and just be fresh and help this team. So I'm going to leave those numbers where they are. Danny Jensen, in spite of only playing in 70 games, he was good for 1.4 FWAR. Again, he's someone that I could see him having somewhat of a breakout season and being one of the game's best two-way catchers, but I'm going to leave that at 1.4. Alejandro Kirk, 0.7. Again, I could see him being much better than that, maybe, but I don't want to jump the gun too much. And how many of you, without having looked at the numbers, knew that Santiago Espinal was good for 2.2 FWAR last season? Wow. he has really done so well. He's exceeded my expectations. And I thought he was going to be a pretty good player, but good for him. Playing in 92 games. So I'm going to leave that there. Now, it could be interesting between assuming Chapman's going to get the majority of playing time over at third base, might need a little bit of rest with the hip surgery and with the turf at Rogers Center. So maybe Espinal plays a few games over at third. Don't really know what the situation's going to be at second base. Will Biggio and Espinal platoon, or is one of them going to be more of an everyday player and the other a bench player? We'll see. So will all all 3 of those men have enough playing time to meet those numbers? I'm going to say yes, some of that might fall off, but again, the performance, at least in the case of Biggio and maybe Chapman, might be a little bit better than people are thinking, so maybe that balances out. And the only player right now who's projected to have a spot on the Toronto Blue Jays at least at opening day, who was worse than a 0 FWAR last season, was Zach Collins. He was good for 0.7. So, or excuse me, minus 0.7. I would take 0.7 from him, but minus 0.7. So again, if they can't find a way to get him right, I hope he doesn't see a lot of playing time with the Jays. Sorry to say, but we're playoff bound. We should be playoff bound, and we need guys who are going to help and not hinder. So see how that goes. I'm rounding out the rest of the roster. Raimel Tapia, 0.4. Ross Stripling 0.2, Jordan Romano 1.2. Relievers tend to be a little undervalued in terms of WAR, so that's not a bad WAR for a reliever, for a closer anyway. Jimmy Garcia 0.4, Adam Simber 1.2. He had a good season last year. Trevor Richards 0.3, Tim Meza 0.9. And I mentioned Cato earlier. I don't really have a baseline for him. It's hard to know what we're going to do because he's never played in Major League Baseball before. So basically, I'm not factoring him into the positive or the negative. That's I'll just assume zero, and then anything on the plus side of zero that they get from him will be a bonus. So I added all of that up. I don't know if any of you were doing a running total in your head. That might be a bit much, but I added everything up before the show, and what I got was 52.9. So what we needed in order to get to 100 games on top of the 47.6 that you get with a team of only replacement level players was 52.4. And we've got, according to my projections, 52.9, so just over 100 wins, 100 and a half even. So maybe my prediction of 101 was not all that far off. And we'll see what the players actually go out and do. But it's really fun this time of year to look at what could be, especially if you've got a team that's really expected to make some noise, just like our Toronto Blue Jays are. I mean, the last time they had a true home opener in Toronto at the Rogers Centre, where they belong, was 2019. And well, basically in 2019, people were just trying to figure out how bad they would be. And they were, no surprise. I mean, it was a rebuilding year, but there was so much talent, and most of that talent is still here, young talent developing, such high upsides that the future really looked bright. And you know what that future is now? And we're going to see what they do, what they can accomplish in 2022. Excuse me just a moment. So that almost brings me to the end of today's show, which means it's time for Through Blue Jay Color Glasses. So wrapping up, talking about the team as a whole, how the team becomes greater than the sum of its parts, and I really think this is going to be a special season. I think they're going to end up winning the AL East division. They're going to have set a new franchise record for wins in a regular season with 100 or 101, and there are going to be so many good individual performances that it isn't that one or two are going to stand out kind of like they did last year. I mean, the Blue Jays lost the American League Cy Young Award winner, the third place finisher in league MVP, another starting pitcher who was pretty good in Steven Matz, and somehow on paper, in my opinion, they've gotten better with the additions that they've made. I mean, they've also including they've got two new starting pitchers, Kevin Gausman and Yusei Kikuchi. They traded for Matt Chapman and his elite defense. And I mean, how well does he fit in, and how well does he complement this team? Because they've got so many guys whose strength is in their bats and whose defense has been at best maybe average or a little bit above average, and at worst, well, we've seen the worst, and we hope not to see a lot of the worst. So Matt Chapman, being one of the elite defenders in all of the game, so helps an area of the Toronto Blue Jays where they could really use some improvement, and he provides that. And Jimmy Garcia, I mean, this is an experienced relief arm. We didn't get to see a lot of him in spring training because he was late getting there, visa issues, but when we did see him, he looked pretty good. And I think in addition to the bullpen that they had already built last year at the beginning of the year and then during the season, that he's only going to help. And I didn't mention the other guys who have made the team out of spring training. So Julian Merriweather, Taylor Saucedo. I mean, you know what? Fingers crossed, all the best. I really hope that they can help the Jays. Bottom line, I think they've put together something special here, and I'm all here for it. And I know that all of you, if you watch Sunny Side of the Dome, you're probably all Blue Jays fans, and I'm sure you're all just as excited as I am. So bring on the 2022 season. Let's get going, and let's see how far they take us. And on that note, that's all I've got for you for today. Go Blue Jays! I can't wait to be there tomorrow and in a bunch more games. And I'll see you again in a week.